Mr. Vincent Hilary Jove is an ex-ZPRA fighter, a mediator, a collective leadership specialist, an author, a church elder, and a freedom fighter. Currently, Mr. Jove is in the process of writing and publishing his second book, which will be titled The Cold War and the Liberation Movements, Pawns or Allies. But today, our focus is on Mr. Jove's lecture titled ZPRA Properties, the Forgotten Pillar of Economic Liberation. Mr. Jove, we welcome you on Motel Broadcasting Corporation. And how are you?
Welcome to MBC. Like and subscribe to my daddy's channel.
I'm fine, thank you, Mr. Carl.
Okay, thanks very much. Yeah, as I said, we are happy to have you back on MBC to give us your second lecture. Today, give us what you have for us in terms of ZPRA properties.
Kubonga mina Babankala. Once again, I want to thank my Motel Broadcasting Corporation for giving me this opportunity to present what I have in terms of this forgotten pillar of economic liberation, the ZPRA properties. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, sons and daughters of liberation, let us start by bowing our heads, if you don't mind, for a brief moment of silence. Let us honor the brave men and women of ZPRA, those who fought, those who fell, and those who still carry the scars of the struggle. Thank you. Thank you. May their courage continue to light our path. May their vision continue to guide our nation. Thank you once again. Most of the times when we speak of the Zimbabwe People's Revolutionary Army, ZPRA, we often speak of the battles, the training camps, the songs of resistance, and the endurance of those who crossed borders in search of freedom. But today, we want to reflect on another side of that legacy, whose significance has been systematically disfigured by being deliberately shrouded in the arms catches allegations. Today, we want to unmask this shameless excuse that feeds into the arms catches sideshow that has been so vociferously magnified above the interrupted economic legacy that presented itself as proof that ZPRA was not only an army of soldiers, but an army of thinkers, planners, and visionaries. Under the leadership of Joshua Nkomo, ZAPU and ZPRA understood that political independence without economic empowerment would be incomplete. They believed that true freedom must feed, employ, and dignify the people. And so even before independence came, ZPRA began building an economic foundation for the future. It is in this regard that the economic significance of ZPRA properties, which though for political convenience has been relegated to insignificance, remains historically fundamental, extending beyond mere ownership of assets to representing a broader vision of economic sovereignty, self-reliance, and political empowerment for a liberation movement transitioning towards statehood. This ZPRA model was among the most democratic and bottom-up economic and accumulation models in African liberation history. While most models of other Southern African liberation movements like the ANC, SWAPO, MPLA devolved into elite accumulation, ZPRA Grassroots Cooperative was unique, though undermined. The initiative reflected a socialist-inspired yet pragmatic strategy to secure a sustainable base for ZAPU's military and political structures in the new nation. Economically, the properties were designed to facilitate the integration of ex-combatants, create employment, and ensure financial self-reliance, so as to have the state concentrate on its core business of providing services. The properties symbolized collective ownership and the continuity of liberation ideals through productive enterprise. Building the future before it arrived. Through ZAPU's investment arm Nitram Private Limited, which also had subsidiaries, ZPRA pooled resources from members, supporters, and friendly governments to create a foundation for the future. The ex-combatants themselves had to fork out $50 each to supplement the initial capital that had been carried over from the Liberation War, with which they acquired farms across the breadth and length of the country, transport fleets, urban properties, and enterprises in Bulawayo, Harare, and all other urban centers. The properties were in primary, secondary, and tertiary industries that were spread all over the country, not as symbols of wealth, but instruments of empowerment. May I take it upon myself to emphasize at this point that these were not clandestine enterprises, but legitimate companies, such that, where necessary, had government officials officiate and cut ribbons at their opening. The vision was very clear. After the war, the fighters should neither be beggars nor social welfare case. Instead, they should be builders of schools, industries, and communities. They saw economic empowerment as the second phase of liberation. This was a liberation movement that invested not in consumption, but in production, not in rhetoric, but in lasting infrastructure. They were preparing for peace even as they fought for freedom. Their dream was for a self-sustaining African economy, one owned and managed by its own people. This was not mere idealism, but practical nation building in motion. However, this well-intended economic autonomy became a victim of the toxic political culture that has haunted Zimbabwe to this day, such that in 1982, amid allegations of arms caches, the government of Zimbabwe confiscated the ZPRA assets under emergency powers. This painful chapter in our history saw the government seize all the properties that had been built with sweat, sacrifice, and hope. Multiple farms, businesses, transport companies, all gone, while thousands of ex-combatants who had dreamed of a dignified life were left stranded. The seizure did not only dismantle a rare example of collective African economic enterprise, but also weakened ZAPU's capacity to function as a viable political force. It also marked the suppression of an alternative economic power base that challenged state centralization and hegemony. Not to mention the erosion of a model for grassroots-led post-war reconstruction. Economically, the confiscation of ZPRA properties was not just about politics. It was about control over wealth and opportunity. It was therefore not only a political blow, it was an economic wound that cut deep into the heart of the liberation legacy. The properties that represented self-reliance and their loss symbolized the betrayal of that vision. This betrayal finds no better expression than from Ian Douglas Smith himself when he said, and I quote, "We were not defeated by our enemies, but were sold out by our allies, or those who pretended to be our allies." Economic liberation deferred. What was meant to be a foundation of empowerment became a story of dispossession when farms were taken, companies shut down, and workers dismissed, and thousands of ex-combatants losing their livelihoods overnight. For those who had fought for the nation's freedom, this was a second loss, a quiet economic war that robbed them of their sacrifice. From an economic standpoint, this was a lost opportunity, not only for ZPRA, but for the nation. ZPRA had laid the groundwork for an indigenous model of collective ownership and production. Their assets could have provided employment, education, and development for generations. Instead, their destruction centralized wealth and power in the hands of a few, while those who had sacrificed the most were left with the least or nothing, both ex-combatants and their civilian partners in the war of liberation. The story of ZPRA Properties should remind us that political independence without economic justice is unfinished liberation, and this fact will remain relevant for as long as there is still a tomorrow to live under the status quo. Above all, Zimbabwe lost a model that could have demonstrated how liberation movements can transform military discipline into productive enterprise. Remembering and reclaiming the vision. Yet even in loss, the spirit of ZPRA remains undefeated, as the war for economic justice, in whatever form, remains inevitable and ongoing unless we reclaim its economic philosophy, which said, we must own, we must produce, and we must empower. A philosophy that called for collective prosperity, not personal enrichment, for self-sufficiency, not dependency. The properties may have been taken, but the values that build them cannot be confiscated. Those values live in every veteran who still believes in service. They live in every young person who dreams of transforming this nation through honest work and innovation. Let us therefore honor ZPRA, not only by remembering their battles, but by completing their unfinished mission of economic liberation for all. As it were, their retained properties remain a symbol of unresolved historical injustice and an enduring reminder of how economic control became and continued to be an extension of political domination after independence. It therefore follows that the restoration of ZPRA properties continues to represent both a moral and developmental imperative for genuine reconciliation and inclusive nation building in Zimbabwe. The story of ZPRA Properties teaches us that a gun can win a nation, but only enterprise can sustain the same nation. As we close, let us remember this. The struggle for freedom was never just about waving a flag. It was about dignity, land, and livelihood. ZPRA's economic vision reminds us that independence is a seed that must be nurtured through enterprise and unity. May we, the living, carry the torch forward. May we rebuild what was lost. May we restore the economic justice that our heroes dreamed of. And may the souls of our departed comrades rest in eternal peace, knowing that their dream still lives within us. Aluta continua. The struggle continues, not with guns, but with plows, pens, and purpose. I thank you.
Oh, thanks very much, Baba Ndlovu. Siyabonga kakhulu umsebenzi wakho muhle kakhulu.
Welcome to MBC. Like and subscribe to my daddy's channel.